Welcome to Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Weldin. Today's story is called Phoenix Feathers, a story inspired by fables from Greece and China, written for you by Daniel Hinds. Thanks! Enjoy the episode! Phoenix Feathers. Once upon a time, in a sprawling, airy forest, there lived a very plain bird. Her name was Fan, and she was truly the most ordinary bird you could ever encounter. Where other birds sang beautiful, soaring songs, Fan could only squawk and quibble. Where other birds had proud beaks and gleaming talons, she had a rocky stub and scratchy nails. And worst of all, where other birds had feathers in all the colors of the blooming flowers, Fan's feathers were the dingy gray of ashes. Life was hard for Fan. She had trouble fitting in and was lonely more often than not. One day, she went to the singing birds, all crooning away in the swaying green limbs of the cypress trees. These birds were white and brown themselves, so she thought perhaps they'd have some sympathy for her ash-gray feathers. "Hello there," she said, doing her best to sound musical and landing instead on an awkward warble. "Do you think I could join in on your singing?" A proud lark stopped his song and puffed himself up. He was a little ball of a bird, and all the more round with his feathers fluffed. "Join us?" he humphed. "Well, with a voice like that, I find it unlikely. But go ahead, give it the old songbird try." Fan took a deep breath and gave it her best shot. She tilted her little beak up and let loose a la 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 la. Unfortunately, her voice cracked and warbled and warbled and warped. If you think of a pretty song, her effort was pretty much the exact opposite. The larks and thrushes all started to laugh and laugh. "If that's your idea of a song, I'd hate to hear you complaining," the proud lark said. Fan flapped away, sadder than before. Still, she didn't want to give up. Maybe she couldn't sing, but there were other flocks. She flapped her little wings and made her way deeper into the forest, deeper and deeper to the dark and quiet trees that the sparrowhawks made their home. These birds were also plainly colored, and they didn't sing so much as screech, so Fan thought perhaps she could find some friends among them. "Hello there," she said, doing her best to sound strong and fierce and landing instead on a shaky whisper. Do you think I could join in with your hunting?" The mighty sparrowhawks glared down at her with their keen yellow eyes. The largest one leaned forward, beak gleaming sharp and deadly. "Join us?" she shrieked. "With that beak and those talons? I find it unlikely, but go ahead, catch that mouse there running below our tree." Fan nodded and dove, streaking towards the ground like she had seen the bigger birds do on so many occasions. She hit the mouse, and her little talons bounced off. Her beak was batted aside. The mouse squeaked in annoyance and disappeared into his hole, complaining all the way. The sparrowhawk started to laugh and laugh. "A mighty hunter can't even kill a mouse," the great bird said. Fan flapped away, sadder than ever before. Still, she didn't want to give up. Sure, she couldn't sing, and true, she wasn't much of a hunter, but there was another group. She flapped her little wings and headed towards the river. There, on the balmy banks, were the colorful birds. Their feathers were plum purple and rocket red and emerald green and ocean wave blue. They were so beautiful to look upon that Fan had been afraid to approach them at first. Still, they didn't sing so sweetly, and they definitely weren't hunters either, so she thought maybe she could find some friends among them. "Hello there," she said, doing her best to sound bright and cheery. "Do you think I could join you and sit by the river with all of you?" A stunningly bright mandarin duck popped out of the water, shaking droplets free of his marvelous golden head. "Join us," he said, cocking his head. "You're much too plain. Why don't you come back when you have something a little more colorful to contribute?" Fan didn't see how she could make that happen, but she was sick of being turned away. So, with no better ideas, she pecked around on the ground for a while, looking for loose feathers. She found some in a sunshiny yellow and others in an overripe orange, and, using a little tree sap, stuck the colored feathers in among her own. Feeling pretty pleased with herself, she returned to the river's edge and posed for the mandarin duck. "Not a bad start," he said suspiciously. "But wait, one of those feathers looks like a tail feather I lost last week." "And those feathers are from my last molting," added a golden pheasant. "Give me those back." The pheasant plucked free its feathers, and the duck did the same, and the other birds followed their lead. Soon, poor Fan was left with no feathers but her own ash gray. "A nice try," said the mandarin duck. "But you can't sit with us." "I can't sing. I can't hunt," said Fan. "I thought at least." "You can't sit with us," he snapped. And Fan flapped away, sadder than ever before. She spent a time feeling sorry for herself, wishing she had a group to join. Eventually, though, she had a new thought. "Okay, I can't sing or hunt, and maybe I'm pretty plain, but does that mean I don't have value? Everything has value, and there are lots of good things about me." "Oh no, I'm not a singer. I'm not sure I can carry a tune. I don't hunt. I'm not a winger, and I am not brightly festooned. But these aren't things I need to have to be a good friend. And I don't need to feel less than in the end. 'Cause there are a lot of good things about me. I like myself. My voice is fine. It keeps me company. I'm gonna sing, I don't care what you say. I don't hunt, but I'm not hungry. I collect seeds and I eat them all day. My feathers blend in with the wood and keep me safe. But feathers aren't what make me good. I'm good anyway. The way I look, what I can do, aren't all I'm worth. This birdie has value, like everyone on the earth. Yes, Fan knew she had value, and she found she was much happier when she stopped trying to fit in. She spent her days singing to herself, cracking open seed pods and bringing them back home to her burrow in the bark. Before long, she had a tree full of delicious seeds and nuts and was quite content in her own company. Not long after, there was a terrible drought. The sun pounded down mercilessly day after day. The rivers dried up, the flowers wavered and wilted, and the mice all left for greener pastures. Soon, the sprawling, airy forest was nearly empty of food. Luckily, Fan had plenty in her tree, but the other birds weren't so lucky. The songbirds found themselves starving and sore. The birds of prey had nothing to prey upon. Even the beautiful birds found their river dried and their food dried with it. They all came together in the forest, chirping and arguing. Some thought they should abandon their homes and fly away, hoping to find a better place. Others pointed out that they'd starve before they could hope to make it anywhere half as good. The arguing soon turned to squawking, and the squawking soon turned to shouting. Fan heard it all from her burrow in the bark nearby. She looked at her supply of food, more than enough to share, and then at all the starving birds outside. A part of her wanted to stay hidden and let them starve. They'd certainly been mean enough to her. But another part was still as friendly as ever, and more than that, Fan still knew that she had value. Just because those birds had been rude to her, that didn't mean she had to be rude to them. She would be true to herself, and that meant being kind, even in the squawking face of meanness. "Hello there," she said, poking her head out from her tree and interrupting the argument. "I've been collecting seeds and nuts and even some berries in my tree. I have plenty to share. Come take a look." The birds gathered around and Fan began to pass out the food. They thanked her and took it meekly, knowing they didn't deserve the kindness she was showing them, but too hungry to refuse. After all were fed, Fan went back inside her tree to sleep. The other birds stayed up all night talking without her, and when the sun rose the next day, Fan found them all waiting outside her home. "Oh, hello there," she said. "Did you eat it all already? I suppose I can share some more." The proud lark flapped forward. "No, you've shared more than enough," he said. "Truly," agreed the sparrowhawk, landing by his side. "You've been kinder than we deserved." The brightly shining mandarin duck waddled up as well. "Kinder than we were to you. We're sorry for how we treated you." "Well, that's okay," said Fan. "Thanks for saying so." She turned to go back inside, but they waved her to stop. "Wait," trilled the lark. "I have something for you." He flapped up to Fan and put his beak to hers. The gift of music passed from him to her, and when Fan opened her mouth, she found herself trilling a beautiful song. The sparrowhawk came next and gifted Fan a mighty beak and gleaming talons. Finally, the mandarin duck and all the rest each pulled off their brightest and most beautiful feather and gave it to Fan to keep. Soon her plumage was the prettiest of all, and when you looked at her, she seemed to shine like the sun itself. "You were always the best of us," said the lark solemnly. "And now we'd like you to be the leader of the birds." "We are at your service," said the sparrowhawk. Fan smiled and took their gifts off for a moment, returning to her small, warbling, ash-colored self. Her valuable self. "Thank you for all of this," she said, "but I'd settle for just being your friend." Of course, they agreed to that, but insisted she keep the gifts, too, for whenever she may want to use them. And that's how Fan became the first phoenix, able to change from ordinary ash to the leader of all the birds, reborn over and over and forever welcomed anywhere she went. The end. Thanks for listening.